Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Genuinely Interested podcast. I'm glad you guys are tuning in and listening to the podcast week after week. I'm going to try and put out 2 podcasts every week starting this week. I think that, with COVID-19, I'm going to be able to free up a little extra time and put in more of these podcasts, which I really enjoy doing nowadays. And I'm finding that I want to spend more time doing it. So I'm going to try and interview more and more people that I think are really interesting and that you guys would find interesting. And this week I have Ben Moon, who I find extremely interesting. I spent a good 2 days listening to his ebook, Denali, which is a memoir of his life. And it was almost like watching a movie. It was the first ebook that I've ever listened to, and it was riveting. I listened to the whole thing in like 2 days, and it was just a front row seat to Ben's life, and he reads the audiobook. So you could really feel when the highs are high, when the lows are low, when he's in pain, when he's happy. It's very visceral. You feel it when Ben is reading the book. Ben has been, an adventure, lifestyle, and portrait photographer for many, many years. And when the movie Denali came out, I think it was 2015, that was when he really, I guess, exploded is the right word, for lack of a better term, onto mainstream consciousness. So I wanted to have him on the podcast and talk about his experience with cancer, which he's very open about, with Denali, who's, as anyone that has a dog would know, was an amazing partner for Ben and really helped him, and his childhood and everything in between, photography, relationships. So, I was very fortunate that Ben took time out of his busy schedule. He's building a house in the Oregon coast. So, yeah, I wanted to thank him for coming on and talking to me. And I hope you guys enjoy the podcast. Hey, Ben, how you doing?
Hey, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to have you on. I've been following your work for a lot of years, and I watched the film that you put out a couple of years back, Denali, and I finished a whole carton of tissues while watching those. I think it's like 8 or 9 minutes. So that had a deep impression on me, and I've wanted to have you on the podcast. So thanks so much for coming.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. Yeah, it's been quite a journey since that film came out. So
Yeah. So maybe you can tell the listeners a little bit about yourself, what you do, who you are.
yeah, I mean, I split my time primarily between photography and filmmaking. I have a little production company called Moonhouse that I tell a lot of short stories in the film form about people that I find inspiring, and some brand pieces for companies like Rivian, that new electric truck company, and Patagonia. Yeah. And recently I wrote a memoir about Denali's lifespan, my dog Denali, that the film you talked about. And yeah, that took about 4 years. So I never thought I could also say I'm an author, but I guess since I finished the book, people have been saying that I should say that out loud. So it still feels a little odd.
You can add it on the resume.
Oh,
So I know you're currently, we chatted a little bit on email, and you said you were currently building a house in Oregon. How's that process going? I worked in construction for many years. I know it's not easy.
Yeah, I mean, it's everybody always jokes when you build a house, it's takes longer and is more expensive than you think it's going to be.
Yeah.
And I've definitely learned through, I built in the summers during college. And my dad was he built all the houses we lived in. And then I worked for a few other general contractors and I kind of had an idea of every step of the way. It's really incredible to watch a house go from, excavation of the site to the finished work and all the steps in between. And it's definitely a lifelong dream to build my own place. And I'm right here on the beach, not far from where the Denali film was made. And I wrote most of the book living in my van that I built out a few years ago. And I've been parked outside on the job site, and it's obviously working out of a 70 square foot space. Trying to run a business while building a house has been a lot, and writing a book, but it's feel like it's kind of coming together now, and starting to see the fruits of the labor. So
yeah, you were actually doing the van life, where now it's like super popular, but you were doing van life before van life it went viral or popular like it is now on Instagram, right?
yeah. I mean, in the early 2000s, I did that mostly as a means to an end. I kind of was just figuring out my life again. I was trained in sports medicine, and some life stuff happened, and I was married super young, and that ended abruptly, and really kind of set me on a path where I wasn't sure what to do, and lived out of the back of a Subaru for almost a year, and then bought a camper van, just that was kind of where my dog and I lived, and I kind of rebuilt my life and started a new career in photography. And it was a little mobile photo lab back then. We didn't have the ease of digital, or in some ways digital is more of a pain because there's a lot more work on the photographer's end to get photos out there. But then at the same time, you have so much more latitude with digital images, and you can redundantly store them, and there's a lot of benefits, but it was pretty easy living, just scanning slides, sending them off to clients. And it definitely wasn't the romantic thing that it is today. There wasn't social media really hadn't come on board yet, and so figuring out how to do it was more like pulling up to the climbing crag or the surf break and just kind of talking to other people and seeing how they were doing it and figuring it out. But so yeah, it's funny because or not funny. It's kind of ironic that in this time where we're being kind of forced to socially isolate and kind of get down to the basics. I lived off the grid as a kid, and lived in the van, and then now I'm living in a van again, and so it's kind of been something I'm pretty used to. But I'm also a pretty social being too. I'm introverted, but I also like people a lot. So it's been a little challenging in that regard to not have the social interactions that we're all used to.
Yeah. How is the situation now in Oregon as far as COVID?
It's honestly, it's hard to know how many cases were untested, but it's been pretty minimal. I mean, I think it's still under 50 deaths. I mean, that's wild compared to what's going on in the East Coast. So, or in the rest of the world. So, people have been pretty good about following the rules. I mean, people are definitely getting stir crazy now and starting to inundate the smaller towns again. I'm hoping they can just stay tight for a little longer for the good of all. But yeah, it's honestly, I'm really grateful to live in a place where I have nature right at my doorstep. The beach is right here, and I can take my dog out and get outside, because I know that a lot of people aren't so fortunate to have that opportunity. So
yeah, that's kind of what made us come from New York to Connecticut. It's we were pretty much like you said, we're going stir crazy. It's a small apartment, and you're just going out with the dogs for 10 minutes and coming back, and it's just much nicer when you have some greenery around and you can just go for a good hike, just outside the door. So I definitely appreciate it much more now. Even in the morning, just going out in the balcony and hearing the birds sing their little tunes, that's something that you really don't get in the city. So you definitely appreciate it once you go out to the suburbs or to the mountains or wherever.
For sure. Yeah. There's a few nesting pairs of bald eagles here that, every morning, usually around, an hour after sunrise, they start hanging out in the trees around here, and just hearing them just kind of reminds me that there's a bigger picture at play. The world still turns, and it's easy to get kind of mired in the, news or just the anxiety of that we're all feeling right now. I mean, we're all going through this together globally. And so it's a interesting experience to experience that, but like really staring out at an ocean or hearing the birds call to each other or just going for a run on a trail and breathing fresh air, like really, really can help keep things in perspective that, the Earth's been here for a long time and it's been through a lot of crises, crisis moments and, it's like, it will pass. It's all on our attitude and how we get through it. So.
Yeah. It's interesting to see if we'll learn anything, if we'll come out of this better or worse, if people will, if social distancing will become a thing and there'll be less physical contact between humans, or are we going to be even more physical? I wonder what path we're going to take. Are we going to go full digital and barely see each other and people are going to start working from their homes, or are people going to yearn for more nature and more human contact? I guess we'll see. I honestly don't know. It's one of those things where I go back and forth on, but it does seem like we're leaning towards less contact, more staying in home. But I guess we'll see in the next few years how these things play out, how human interaction will unfold.
Yeah, I mean, I wrote a lot about going through a life-changing experience in my book, and like going through cancer and the different experiences of just heartbreak when you're younger and you feel like you're never going to get through it, and the cancer is like the future is so uncertain, you don't know if you're going to make it or not, and those experiences change you forever, and I, no matter who you are, that it has a long lasting effect. And, there's some trauma involved. And so you have to work through that for sure. But I really believe that it'll shift everyone's perspective in a way that, whether they want to or not, it's going to change, people's perspective on just gratitude for what they have. And at least in this generation that's experiencing this, I don't think people are going to, take things quite as much for granted. I mean, obviously you time gradually makes you forget, but I feel like, I have hope. I mean, I have hope that this will make people really appreciate what they have, and make them realize that they need less as well, and what they spend their money and time on, how kind of a lot of that's just an escape from what needs to be dealt with and what needs attention.
Yeah. So, I mean, you just mentioned your book. I just finished listening to the ebook, which was, I think, a little over 7 hours. And it's the first ebook I've ever listened to. I actually ordered the book when we were in New York, but we left before it arrived, and I was never able to get it. So I downloaded the ebook 2 days ago, and I went through the whole 7 plus hours. And it's weird because I'm talking to you, and I kind of feel like I know you. I feel like I've had a first row seat at your life. It wasn't like, it was very different than a movie, and than a book, where the book you kind of imagine everything in your own head. Here it was just very, very vivid. Especially it was your voice and it was your pain that I could feel at times, throughout this crazy journey that I went on for 7 hours, which is your life. I just found it completely, eye-opening, and I loved how honest you were. I think your brutal honesty is something that I found really refreshing and heart-wrenching, and something that I think a lot of people are maybe honest. I mean, they have to try to be, I think authenticity is important in storytelling, but you were just as honest as I've heard anyone. And I thought that was absolutely amazing and really refreshing to hear.
Thanks, man. Yeah, I kind of had learned with the film, because I had a few edits that we tried to put out before the actual final edit that we released online, and that they were all a little shallow. They weren't vulnerable. I was trying to be abstract and use metaphors to convey feelings. And what I learned is that the only way that, in releasing that and having it touch a lot of people, was that, A, a story needs to be relatable, but B, it's like vulnerability is something that we all struggle with. It's not easy to share the unpleasant parts of our life and the mistakes and the things that we, are, especially on social media, things are so curated now. And,
Yeah.
it's a good reminder that, we need to hear that everybody goes through the same struggles. And I've been reminded of that many times. And writing the book, I knew that was going to be the only thing that was going to make it have an impact, is if I shared the details, that a lot of the questions that I'd been asked about, going through the cancer experience, and then just the lessons I'd learned from friendship with my dog, but also just reading. When I finished the book, I kind of never wanted to touch it again. I was really just wanted to be as far away from it as possible. I was ready to just move on. And then when I heard that, I got an email from my publisher saying, setting up a time when I was going to read the book, the audiobook, I was like, oh no, I actually have to go through the entire thing word for word again. And until, it took about 30 hours to get to those 7 hours that you mentioned. And we did it all in 5 days, and it was intense, but it was very cathartic too.
Yeah.
I mean, just to realize what was in there and to help process that. And it helped prepare me for actually releasing it, because I kind of had this, like, I'm not sure what I wrote. I don't remember what's in there, because, you go through so many rounds of edits, and I kind of lost track what was actually in the book. And so it was good to be reminded of what was in there. And also just remember some of the lessons. It was ironic, because there was a few times that I read things out loud, and I was like, wow, who wrote that? Did I write that? It's like, it was already so far away from it that I, found some mistakes, found some great things. And, it was like, it was a journey going through that. But
were you coached at all at how to read it? Because it was just so, again, I'm going to use this word probably a little too much, but authentic. It just felt like I could feel, the pain, or I could feel the humor, or whatever emotion you were going through. I felt that as a listener.
Yeah. I mean, I had done some voiceover before, for various films, but I had never done anything of that magnitude, at all. That was definitely a first. I had never written a book either. So, but, the studios, when you record an audiobook, usually there's a director in the studio with you, and, it was Penguin Random House Audio, and they, it was like interesting to walk the halls of that studio outside of LA and see that, Michelle Obama had read her book there, and a bunch of other people, that I looked up to. And so it was pretty intimidating at first, but you're just in this room, and you have a director on the other side of the glass, and, they just, you mess up, or you need to reread something, you don't say it quite right, they'll have you repeat it. But because I'd done enough voiceover, I kind of had a running tally of what I'd done in my head, and kind of could keep, if I reread something, if it didn't feel right. But I was really interested to, actually just some of the parts of the book that I was like, that's not going to bother me at all to read that. I got pretty emotional, but I think that helped. I think it helped make it feel more present too. Because some of the parts really did hit me. Like when Denali was towards the end of his life, and some of the harder experiences with cancer, I really kind of shook me up while I was reading it. So it definitely came out in the recording.
Yeah. I mean, I was listening to it, and my wife was across the room, and she sees me pulling my nose, and she's like, "Oh, you're okay?" I'm like, "Hey, I'm fine. Don't worry about it. I'm okay." Just, wiping the tears away. It's just, I have 2 dogs, and I love them like family. And, there was some parts that definitely hit home. So, I'm sure most people, when they either read the book or listen to the audiobook or watch Denali, they probably have a very similar experience. I'm sure a lot of people have reached out and probably told you something similar.
Yeah, it's been really affirming, honestly. Before all the stuff with COVID hit, it was just really, a lot of people wrote me and said, "Hey, I was thinking I was just going to get a book about, this dude who lived in the outdoors and made pictures and had a dog for a friend, whatever." And they didn't realize how much deeper it was going to go. And so, a lot of people were just told me how much they could relate in so many ways to the story, and in some surprising ways too, just about, dealing with anxiety and being a shy kid and stuff like that. But then when all the coronavirus stuff hit, people started realizing, just saying how much hope that was giving them by reading it. And that's when it really kind of felt like it was all worthwhile, because it was, when I wrote it, I was like, I was hoped that it would help just one person, then it would feel worthwhile. But, it's definitely feels like it's making an impact. And what I learned with the Denali film, that once you release something into the world, it's not yours anymore. Everybody interprets it through their own life story. And so it's interesting talking about it, because I feel that even though it's a crazy personal story, like really intensely personal, I feel oddly detached from it in ways, because I'm almost like an observer now, because just watching it go through the world, and do its thing. Kind of like when Denali would just go wander around and meet people. It's kind of how it is again. So,
yeah. I mean, you've had a, pretty crazy life, I would say. And definitely one of the craziest things is you had colorectal cancer at 29, and you went through a colostomy, which must have been a pretty frightening experience at the time. And maybe even, like you said, embarrassing at the time. Not that there's anything to be embarrassed about, but at the time it must have seemed like it was. And that's kind of one of the main focus points of the ebook. How does someone at 29 get colorectal cancer?
It's happening a lot more frequently. There's been a few articles released recently in the New York Times and other places and medical journals about a lot of younger people in their 20s and 30s being diagnosed with colon cancer, and that's one of the motivators for me writing the book too. But it was completely unexpected. I mean, I had the symptoms and I ignored them, and I read a few things about colon cancer because a friend told me that you might have that. You should look into that. And the first question was, are you over 50? And so I just blew it off, and I was at the, pretty much the prime of my life. I was in my late 20s, and, just getting my photography career going, and I was climbing really hard, and just really, really loving life. And, your late 20s are always a bit of a transition period, but, being faced with suddenly just having the rug ripped out from under me was how it felt. And then to survive it, and to think that maybe I was going to get through it, but then have, it was before the chemo, the really heavy chemo. So I was kind of a little more optimistic than I probably should have been. Didn't realize how I could handle the initial rounds of chemo and radiation pretty well. They made me really tired, but I could still do a lot. I didn't deal with too heavy of nausea, but once after I recovered from the surgery is when the real chemo hit, and that was when it was really challenging. But to go through the emotional struggle and impact of just suddenly having, my body changed forever. It was like, I just thought, a lot of the thoughts that, like that no one's going to love me, and I'd never be able to do the things I do, was able to do before with, surfing and climbing and being outside. And it was just a whole adjustment to a new paradigm with, having a colostomy bag. And so it was interesting because it took about 5 years to recover from the, probably the treatment, to get my strength fully back and my hormones back in balance and everything. But the mental, kind of the mental impact of emotional impact of having a colostomy, it took like a decade before I felt just like it was a part of me, and I wasn't embarrassed about it anymore. But it was just an interesting experience in some ways, it's a handicap, it's an amputation. You're losing a part of yourself, and it's a not visible to all, like some handicaps are, but it's like, you have to relearn how to do something that is such a basic function of human life, which is always interesting. And I remember meeting Jesse Bailauer, this athlete who started the Life Rolls On Foundation to help those dealing with disabilities to get back on surfboards and things like that. And he's in a wheelchair, and it was at the Venice skate park. And I just randomly met him, and at the time I was thinking about doing a project about people that had gone through really intense experiences like that and gone on to thrive. And I remember him looking at me and just saying, like, after I told him what I'd gone through, he just looked at me. He's like, not every handicap or disability is obvious to everyone. Everybody's got their own struggles. And I've thought about that a lot since then, how whether it's emotional or physical, like no one really knows what you're going through. And so just, it's always good to remember that.
Yeah. I mean, I think throughout the book, you have just an amazing outlook on things, like naming your bag Earl. And I think that kind of stuff probably helps you go through things in a much better fashion. I mean, when they told you about the colostomy bag, what was your initial reaction?
Kind of denial, honestly. I mean, when they first said that I would need that, my main surgeon told me that, and he told me, like, listen, he goes, if you don't get this surgery, there's a 50% chance of recurrence. And now that I've lost several friends to this disease, I realized that how serious that was. But he also said, when you don't have portion of your digestive system, which in my case would have been my rectum, it's like you're not able to like hold it, or like, there's like, it's just like your whole system's out of whack. And so he goes, you're going to be back here begging for a surgery anyway. And I just I didn't want to believe him. But then when I went into Portland and got a second opinion at one of the big hospitals there, and then the doctor told me the same thing. The surgeon was like, no, you need this, otherwise your life is in danger, basically. And that's kind of how the book opens. It's like right after that, when I'm driving towards the ocean after that news, to just I just wanted to be in the ocean and jump in and wash it all away.
Yeah. I mean, did you try to, convince them or try to see if there's any other options, if there's anything else that they can do? Or were you just kind of, okay, this is my fate and I'm going to deal with this?
Yeah. I mean, I definitely argued with them a little bit, like thinking that maybe there was another option. But what I realized was, because my tumor was so low, it had already affected my ability to hold it. The sphincters are actually, going through sports medicine. I had a lot of anatomy and physiology classes, and one of my professors joked in front of a big, lecture hall. He goes, your body's most talented muscles are your sphincters, because you can simultaneously hold back a liquid and a solid while we're releasing a gas. And I mean, the whole class laughed.
Yeah.
But once those muscles are compromised, which they were, I mean, my tumor was so low, it started already affecting them. I realized that, that wasn't going to be a pleasant way to live. And so I already kind of knew that, because I was already experiencing a lot of issues with that. So yeah, it was one of those things that was like emotionally the hardest thing. Like, you go through all the stages of grief, like the denial, the anger, and the acceptance. And so, but that surgery saved my life. And, I still have hope that someday maybe something will be figured out that, to medical advancements. But, for now I've got it pretty well under control and managed. So.
Yeah. I mean, my uncle has it, but like you said, he's over 50. So I've seen it firsthand. And, I have a little bit of stomach issues, and I have a whole side of my family that suffers from Crohn's and IBS and different stomach issues as well. So it really hit home when you're describing how you suffered for so long, but you were just kind of either ashamed or embarrassed, and you just didn't want to admit that you have these issues. I think that probably happens to a lot of people. Do you think if you would have gotten checked earlier, then maybe you would have been better off? Maybe you wouldn't have needed, the bag right now?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. There was a chance that had I gotten checked out immediately, they could have gotten the margins and I wouldn't have needed the surgery, but I was, when I first had symptoms, I was 27 years old and, just climbing and, just doing my thing, and going to the doctor or even getting sick, living in a van just seemed like the worst thing ever. So, and that's what I blamed it on a lot. I read a lot while I was trying to figure things out. I blamed it on IBS or Crohn's, and I almost honestly, like the first doctor visit I had, she said, I can give you an anti-inflammatory. It's probably just IBS or hemorrhoid or something like that, and I could give you anti-inflammatories, and you probably will be fine. But let's get you scoped to be sure. And her little change of heart right then saved my life. Like I would not be here. Like I imagine by the end of that happened in June, and or like May, June sometime, and I imagine I would have probably been stage 4 by the end of summer because it was right on the line. So.
Wow.
But
yeah,
so it's
Oh,
go ahead.
I was going to say, I just hope that this is something that people, take to heart. It's not, I feel like there's this ego thing where I'm fine, I'm good. I don't want to go to the doctor, I'm strong or whatever it is. But sometimes just going to the doctor and getting things checked out 6 months earlier or whatever the amount of time, that can actually save your life, and that can actually make, your disease go away. Or it's a smart thing to do. It's not something people should be embarrassed about.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, like that's everything. Pretty much my mission in life at this point is just to like really encourage people. If you have any symptoms, educate yourself on the symptoms of colon cancer. If you have any, suspect symptoms or gassiness or bloating or visible blood in your stool, get checked out, because it could be something really minor, or it could be really early stages and just a polyp, and a colonoscopy. A colonoscopy will save your life, and they're really pretty easy. I mean, it's not fun for a day, but if anybody is going in for a colonoscopy, my one advice is, if you have the option, get the earliest appointment possible, because you're going to be very dehydrated. And personally, like as soon as I get in there, I always ask for the first appointment. As soon as I get in there and lay down in the, they wheel me back or whatever, I ask for a IV and a saline solution. I was like, start rehydrating me now, because the headache I have is vicious, because the first couple I had were, noon or 11 or noon or whatever. And, I could barely see because the headache was so bad from the dehydration. So, people are usually, nurses are really accommodating if you are asked for that. So.
Yeah. I mean, you read through, there's some parts, where you read about your stay in the hospital and surgery and post-op and all that stuff. And it kind of, you almost hear like a tinge of humor in the way you describe some of the things you were going through. And I think, if I'm, correct me if I'm wrong, but it just seemed like that was the best way to do it. Because when you're talking about that area and in positions you're in and all this very embarrassing stuff, it's like you have to have that little bit of humor to tell that story.
Yeah, I mean, really, like the sense of humor is what got me through it. I mean, you're stripped of your dignity, really. And unfortunately, in Western medicine, it's all about trying to save your life. And there's not a lot of room for all the emotional support. Or there isn't, at least at this point. I hope there is eventually. And yeah, I mean, there was a lot of it that was really demeaning, and it just felt awful, especially dealing with the cancer in that area. But I had to laugh, and, I was really grateful for, in radiation, everybody was just, really accommodating. But like, it was one part that, I talked about, like getting radiated and having to put the lead thing around my, testicles, and just to try to like protect me from the radiation beams. And this, my radiation therapist was beautiful, and just trying to sit there, and just how embarrassing that was to, be so vulnerable and naked on a weird table with this giant radiation machine. It just was a very alien experience. And so, but being able to laugh about it, and I tried to add some brevity. I mean, I didn't want the book to just feel like this heavy story. I wanted to add a lot of hope and hopefully add a little humor in there. And I definitely learned with the film that humor really helps just pull you in and open you up to the experience. And so, yeah, it was. I think it was necessary for survival, and I think I knew I needed to add that to the book. Otherwise, it would just feel too heavy.
Yeah. But I mean, you kept through everything. I mean, I don't know what stops you took, but for the most part, you pretty much kept going. I mean, I saw a picture of you recently, and you're in your 40s, and I mean, you're jacked, you're ripped, right? Like, there's not an ounce of fat on you, so you still kept being active this whole time, which I think might have probably helped. I mean, it definitely, didn't negate from your progress. So I'm assuming it had to help both mentally and physically.
Yeah, and I'm really grateful for my friends too and my community through that, because I I've learned just for mental health and my emotional health that being physically active is very important. And now I try to surf every day if I can. Working on the house is really tiring as well physically, and so I'll just accept that and just put my energy into that. But during the process of going through the cancer treatments and whatnot, it definitely was, what kept me motivated. Just being outside, my friends would drag me out, just be like, "Hey, let's just go for a bike ride." And like a lot of impactful sports, because of the surgeries and all the tubes and wire, that were hanging out of me and stuff. It wasn't easy to go for a lot of runs. Sometimes I could, sometimes I couldn't. There were certain times when I felt more vulnerable. But like biking and climbing when I could, and then once I was cleared to surf, just being in the water and being in small waves. I took a lot of trips to Mexico and Hawaii just to get into the ocean and feel that water. And, yeah, that's just what drives me and motivates me, and kind of my life. I guess my photography career was built around adventure sports. And so I have to keep up with the athletes I'm photographing. And so it's literally part of my job to stay in shape. So, it's kind of a job requirement.
Yeah, I think the one thing I learned from you throughout this ebook was never go to the ocean in Hawaii. It seems like every time you did, there was something like a near-death experience. So I was like, I've never been to Hawaii, but the oceans sound terrifying there.
It's just the thing about the Hawaiian Islands the swells there can change so quickly, and then they're hitting, they're traveling thousands of miles, and they hit this little tiny volcanic island chain. And so they're going from deep water into a reef break, hitting a reef and breaking. And that's what gives the waves like a power that is really unique. But once you learn that power and you learn how to time it, it's a different story. But yeah, I definitely learned the hard way. I was definitely a kook when I first got there. So,
so after, or I mean, during or after, did you make any changes to your lifestyle, diet wise at least? Did you, take on a different diet, or did you stay with what you were already eating?
I've kind of learned. Well, the thing about having a classmate, or Earl, as I call him, is that it really, I don't have the ability to control, if I have gas or something, I don't have the ability to control that. And so I'm able, what it really does is it's like a very powerful feedback loop. I know when my stomach isn't in agreement with me and my system. And so I just gradually just eliminated the things that didn't agree with me. And, everybody's body's different, but the one thing that probably everybody could benefit from is just cutting processed sugars and foods out of your diet. I mean, I try not to eat sugar or things with processed sugar in them at all. That's what I read labels. I always try to find things with the lowest sugar content possible, or added sugars. That definitely affects my energy and my mood the most. And I don't eat a ton of bread. It's not that I'm gluten free at all. I realize it just makes me really tired. And so a lot of my diet choices are what keep me alert and motivated, because I've, being a freelancer and working from home a lot, I have to kind of, just I have to be self-motivated. I can't, it's not that somebody's just there riding me to get stuff done. So I have to figure out how to keep things going. But yeah, it's just, I just try to eat healthy. I mean, there's a lot of fad diets out there, but I just try to listen to my body.
So many fad diets. Yeah. Every week there's a new one. So, I mean, there was a part in the ebook where you mentioned that you had to have a fundraiser. I think you raised like $30,000. And, when you look at what's happening right now, with people who have probably huge, bills, medical bills that they're going to have to pay later on, should the U.S. move into some sort of a healthcare system where it doesn't have to be completely free? I mean, I know most of the Western world has free healthcare, or at least it's partially free or mostly free, but some form of free healthcare where the U.S., if you get sick, you can pay, and if you don't have insurance, even if you do have insurance, copay can be insane. But if you don't have insurance, you can pay tens of or hundreds of thousands of dollars, which I think it's insane.
Yeah, I mean, I know it's a complex issue, but I think our healthcare system needs a major overhaul. I mean, the Affordable Care Act, definitely, I benefited from that in the regard that the pre-existing conditions clause, in there, it was eliminated from insurance, not being able to, discriminate against those pre-existing conditions. But yeah, everybody's going through these like huge hospital stays and stuff right now. There's a lot of issues with that. And, even all my policies I've just watched my premiums go up and up and up. And, it's definitely going to require a hard look at the system. And, I really hope that will happen in the next decade. I just, for the younger generation's sake, I really hope that happens.
Yeah. I don't know why I don't know why it's politicized.
It's a basic human right.
It's a human right. Like, you want your citizens to be healthy. You want them to be productive. You don't want people on pills and overweight and feeling bad with diabetes. You want, I don't know. I guess some corporations do want that because it helps their bottom line. But overall, as a country, you want a healthy country. So I feel like a healthy country should give free healthcare to its citizens. But that's just my opinion.
And to prioritize preventative care too. I feel like that's the biggest issue with our healthcare system right now.
Yeah.
Because all it does, it's like fixing a problem that is, I mean, the pharmaceutical industry has way too much power as well. And, there's people that have major health issues that are caused by side effects from all the medications they're on. And it's just, instead of just figuring out the root cause. And I was in sports medicine and I would watch surgeries and I would see people with various health issues, and they're having these surgeries that were fixing a worn out joint or a knee or a hip or whatnot, but there was other underlying issues that caused that. And instead of going through the underlying issues, it was always just, let's just fix the problem. And those surgeries cost six figures, and it's mind blowing. So it's every chemo treatment, I cannot believe how much they cost. It was insane. So
yeah, I can't even imagine. I remember a few years back, I went to the hospital again, some stomach pains that I was going through, and I had insurance, and I received a copay. And I was in the hospital for maybe 4 to 5 hours. I received a copay of $2,500. And then like a month later, I received another bill for like $500 for the doctor. Like, wait, the doctor's separate from the hospital? I thought they come together as a pack, but apparently you're paying separately. So it's crazy. It's, I'm originally from Israel, where it's free. You have free healthcare, so it just seems like when you come from a place that has it, like Europe or Canada or Israel or maybe Australia even, it just it seems crazy when it's so expensive. Blows my mind.
Yeah. I mean, obviously we have there, I know that in a lot of healthcare systems it does take a lot longer to get to, some of the elective surgeries, but when there's an emergency, it really shouldn't. Yeah. We should not be afraid of the cost to go and take care of our health. That's bottom line.
Yeah. So you've you've gone through a lot of trials and tribulations, obviously, from a young child with anxiety, and obviously what you went through was cancer. Do you think physical and mental pain is a good thing for personal growth?
I do.
Not obviously, to an extent, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, I think that all the most challenging experiences that I went through, in my life have always brought the greatest growth and the greatest I mean, I feel like had I not gone through any of those challenges, I wouldn't be here where I am today, and so I'm grateful for them. And so yes, I think that those that have gone through something challenging always have just a I don't know, a vibe or an air to them that I feel like I can relate to a lot better. When someone's just kind of floated through life and had never really experienced anything challenging, I always just feel a little bit that I can't quite relate to them as much. But I also feel like learning how to manage, our mental health and our, things like that is just really crucial for our physical health, because stress, anxiety, things like that affect our physical health so much. And I mean, it really is my belief that, not being able to process the pain that I was feeling around, going through a divorce at a really young age, and, just the betrayal and like grief I felt, I feel like, that the doctor said that was about when the tumor started growing, was at that time. And so I feel like, stress and our physical health is so related. And so for me, I just try to prioritize keeping my life as free of negativity and stress. And not that you want to challenge yourself, for sure, but just making sure that, you have the resources and the ability to like process that and go through it and not let it just fester and eat you up.
Yeah. So you mentioned that you were married young, and when I heard that I feel like there was a lot of similarities between our life stories, so I found that kind of funny. But you mentioned that like I said, you were married young, and I feel like a lot of times we choose relationships that mirror a relationship we had with our parents growing up. Do you think that you married your first wife, Melanie, because there was something that resembled a relationship you had with your mother? Not to be like too psychological, but just that's something that kind of popped in my head while I was listening to it.
Yeah, I mean, we all have our childhood relationships we needed to heal in order to, once, I had a therapist or my counselor that I work with now, like tell me that, once you healed that relationship with your mother, that your romantic life is going to be a lot easier, and you're going to figure, that's one, it's a very true thing. It's like we all see the world through the lens of our own experience. And so, and it's those patterns are formed very young, both in our personality and how we approach relationships and how we see the world. So I do think it's really important to just do the self work and try to learn how to just move past those, hang-ups we have from a young age, for sure.
Is it weird that people know so much about you? Like I just feel like I know so much about you just from, listening to that memoir for 7 hours. Is that something you're getting used to? Just people knowing the most detailed private things about your life?
That was by far the hardest thing for me to move past, that I had many sleepless nights over the last couple of years of this thinking about, wanting to make sure I conveyed things in the right way and didn't feel like I was complaining. But also I just knew that I needed to share things in detail. Otherwise, others couldn't relate. If no one, if you just generalize things, it's not relatable. So you have to explain them in detail. And yeah, it's not something I ever dreamed of my entire life, of writing a memoir that would be personal and telling that much. But I knew it was important that if it could help other people, that it was important to share that. So.
Yeah. No, that's amazing. I don't know if I'd be able to do that. I think even with the culture of today, where everything is shareable, everything people post their lives, and there's video streaming 24/7, and everyone wants to share the moment instead of living in it. I think there's something to be said about not sharing everything all the time and keeping something to yourself to be private, which is very different from your story. But just generally speaking, I think today they're just doing a little too much extra sharing.
Yeah, and that's why I was definitely didn't want to. I have seen oversharing for the wrong reasons, but I didn't want to do it for attention. I wanted to do it in hopes it would help others. But I also, I'm a really private person in general. And so that was really, really hard for me to get past, wanting to share that much, but also the stories, takes place for the most part, 15, 20 years ago. And so I felt like sharing a bit about that was, helping myself learn the lessons, and hopefully it'd help others as well. So.
Yeah, no, you have an actual story, you have something to share, and then you have an experience where a lot of people now, they want to be famous for the sake of being famous without really going through the mental hardship and the story and the experience. So, yeah, I didn't want to put those two together, but yeah. So before I heard Nori in the background, right?
Yeah. Yeah. She was barking at something. Yeah.
Yeah. That's what they do. But I think that, like I said, there was in the short film, and then in the ebook as well, whenever there was emotional moments with Denali, I kind of teared up. And I think dogs seem to be this great mediator between humans. They're almost an icebreaker for two people to start talking. When you're taking your dog out for a stroll and you see someone, and you wouldn't regularly talk to that person, but a dog is that icebreaker. And sometimes you have connections with people, sometimes you don't, but it is that icebreaker. And they just have such a deep emotional intelligence, because we're speaking a foreign language to them that they don't understand, but yet they understand us on an emotional level. How much do you think Denali helped you in the process of, healing from cancer, both emotionally and physically?
I mean, honestly, and he helped me immensely. I mean, that's the reason why I made that film, and
yeah,
and the reason why I spent so much time writing the book. It was just like there's something about the friendship of a dog that is truly, ineffable. It's really hard to describe, but it, yeah, I mean, there's something about it, a being that is there for you through no matter what. They don't hold grudges. They're just every morning. It's a clean slate. It's a good reminder to just get outside, to be in the present moment, to just be able to hug your dog and just when nobody else seems to understand you. It's a real thing. I mean, and I didn't have the energy in recovering from cancer or going through the cancer experience to really talk to other humans. Sometimes it just takes, like I said before, I'm kind of a social introvert. I need my recharge time. And when you're really knocked flat from cancer treatments, you don't have a lot of energy to begin with. And so my social well was very, very dry. And so having a being, a dog that could be there for me, Denali, like was really special. And I, those moments when you don't feel like going outside, or you just don't feel like, when you're out of shape, or, when you can't even hardly stand up, just having a dog to get you out the door to just take a walk around the block really helps.
Yeah, I mean they're amazing. They play so many different roles. They're kind of like kids on the one hand, where you have to take care of them, but they're also these adults that, I'm seeing this now where we're living in a bigger house, and then my dogs are taking on the role of the protectors, and they're securing the perimeters, and they're, watching what's going on outside, and they're very weary of us, and they're just being very defensive. And they're also a best friend who listens to you. And they just have so many roles in our lives that I'm not sure one single human can play all those roles like a dog can.
Yeah, I mean, it's like too much to ask from a partner, but from a dog that they can do that. And I remember one of my mentors, she told me once, she's like, dogs are like a sponge. Like, every day they can absorb all the anxiety and pain and stuff you're going through, and then the next day they're all wrung out and dried out and fresh and ready to absorb it again. They're just kind of these tireless beings that, they're affected by when we're going through stressful times. I mean, you can definitely see it mirrored on them, but they're also able to handle that in a way that, another human being couldn't. And so, we can lean on them a little more than, in some cases, than we could a human. And they're willing for it. They're up for the task. And, there's just something about, if you had a hard day, you're, like Nori laying her head on my chest and just like taking a deep breath and letting out a big sigh and being completely at ease and content. It just reminds me just like to take a deep breath myself and to just let go. It's really gratifying and just, yeah, it's so peaceful.
Yeah. I put out a tweet the other day basically saying that if you're in quarantine right now and you don't have a dog, you're doing it wrong. Because if I wouldn't have my dogs, I think I'd go crazy for this past month and a half.
I fully agree with that. I'm really grateful I've got a dog. And I mean, I know dog adoption rates are through the roof right now. And I heard. I hope that people that are adopting are going to continue to see the benefit of that and not just drop them back off when this is all passes by, whatever months or a year. I don't know how long this is all going to take, but I hope that everybody is able to appreciate the wonderful thing that is a companionship of a dog.
Yeah, well, they'll definitely, if they didn't know by now, and they watch your video, they'll definitely know, because that's one of the most pure stories I've seen about a relationship between a dog and a human. So for the people that haven't watched, I know it's been seen over like 20 million views, but for those who have not seen it, definitely check out Denali on YouTube. Yeah, it's something I think everyone that's an animal lover and not an animal lover should watch that video. So you are a self-taught photographer basically, right? Can you kind of run through how you first got into photography? How did the relationship with Patagonia start?
Yeah, I mean, I bought a camera around the time when the media newspapers were starting to switch over from film to digital, and so I bought a film camera kind of I think it was in late 2000. And back then, you didn't have YouTube and, a lot of other resources to learn from. And so I had to just read library books. And a friend of mine who went to photography school, and now he actually runs one of the, that's a shop called Mountain Souls that they actually do a lot of the repairs for Patagonia in Portland. And he owns that. But he took me for a walk and gave me a little lesson on how to use my little SLR camera. And, it was just learning on slide film was really challenging. You don't have the latitude of digital, or our iPhones can take pictures of anything, and so it was a really, really harsh teacher. A lot of money was wasted on film, and that was not exposed properly. And so I was doing that for a little while and started to just document, going climbing and the kind of the behind the scenes moments. And kind of just naively, I sent a couple sheets of slides, about 40 slides to Patagonia, and they sent a letter back that I still have. They'd held 4 images into their archives, which I didn't really know what that meant. But then a couple months later, they sent another letter saying that they were publishing 2 of them in one of their European catalogs. And that, getting those checks for those images was like, wow, maybe I could, this is amazing. This is fun to do. And, but now I have, I think, I don't know, like 17 or 1800 images in their archive now. Back then the archive was like it was a vault with a bunch of slides in it, and they've since, digitized everything and sent everything back. But, they have, hundreds of thousands of images in their archive, but they still pull old images and publish them from trips way back. And it's been a really special experience working with them because they're still family owned. I've done trips with Yvonne, the founder, and, just worked with them for a long time. And, several of my really dear friends have been photo editors or athletes there. But it kind of, photography was my sole focus for pretty much the first, I don't know, 5 or 7 years. And then things started gradually shifting over to motion after that. So it was like my photography experience was going from film to digital, which was rough for a lot of photographers at the time. And then, a lot of action photographers and people that were doing like ski and surf and climbing, they saw an influx of new photographers when the digital thing started, but also when stock photography and, there was more photographies in the market, a lot of their income dried up. And so people just had to transition from one thing to the other. And then motion was kind of the next big challenge. And then, most recently social media. So there's been all these shifts in how to create and how to distribute and how to, do it all. And it's funny that the latest thing I did was write a book, because that's kind of going all the way back to the very beginning, books are one of the oldest forms of media and creativity, and really is the most challenging because you have to do so much with so little. But I love it all. I mean, it's all kind of teaches me so many things, but I mean, honestly, photography is still my first love. But I just, this week, Rivian, the electric, truck and SUV company that I've been working with, they released a film about my story that Jeff Johnson, who was in that film. Yeah, awesome. It's called The Lucky Ones. It's on Vimeo. That was kind of about my story kind of now. And then today they released a short about Alex Honnold, who was in that Free Solo documentary that won the best documentary last year, I guess. And so it was kind of fun to go back through all the photos from those productions this week. And just, I realized just how much I enjoy that process of collaboration, and how much Jeff shared a lot of films from the surf movies from back in the, early 2000s that the Malloy brothers made, and, that Jack Johnson made, and things like that. And there's something about film and making a short film or a feature film that so many elements go into it, and the collaboration is so challenging. But just working with people that are more talented than you on different aspects of the film, on the score, on the cinematography, on all the different parts, and the sound design and the color, and it's such a puzzle to put together. And I really love that. I mean, film is incredible, and I built my place to kind of have a studio and an edit space, so I could, kind of make it a collaborative community space to create. And I live a little more remotely from like a big, film hub or city, but there's a beauty in, editing a film here, or, doing productions from here that I think that is really beneficial.
Yeah. I mean, today all you need is a little studio with a couple of computers and some gear, and then you can pretty much do whatever you want. I feel like that's the leverage that the internet gave us, where we don't need to go into large studios, or I mean, we can pretty much do whatever we want within our homes nowadays, which is something that was unthinkable even 10, 15 years ago. So yeah, it's pretty amazing.
Yeah, and a lot of my favorite feature films are the ones that were made the most simply, you know. There's still a lot of players in them, but they're not necessarily made by major studios. And, you know, like I just saw that film that came out last year, Peanut Butter Falcon, and with Shia LaBeouf, and
Yeah. How is that one?
it's so good. It's so good, and it's a very small production. You know, it's a very simple production, but it just reminded me that it's all about story. You know, that really film and any sort of a photo, a film, a book, it's all about the story, and that there's just like, you know, the music's great, the acting is phenomenal, but it's just a really, really heartwarming tale. I think it's a good one to watch right now, because it just kind of gives you hope.
Oh, well, I'll watch it this weekend. We actually watched last week 1917. Have you watched that movie?
Oh my goodness, that's
talk about God.
I saw it in the theater. I don't think I breathed for 2 hours.
God, I was silent for a good 10 minutes after the movie ended. I was just sitting there, mouth open. I was like, wait, what did I just experience? It wasn't a movie. It was like a cinematic experience. It was unbelievable.
Yeah. I mean, the fact that Roger Deakins and his film team, his camera team, you know, made that film feel like it was one shot the entire film. I mean, there were some transition points, but all the tools they used to make you feel like you were with them in the trenches and on that one little mission, it would just felt, I haven't experienced a film like that in a long time. I mean, that was a really well done piece for sure.
I can't remember the last time that I left the movie just feeling that way. And the amazing part is there were parts in the movie where there wasn't a lot happening. It was just a guy or two guys walking through a field, but the feeling that you got around it was like, wow, there's something happening, or something's around the corner, or the context of which these events are unfolding in front of you. The whole thing was just super mesmerizing. And I just literally for 2 hours, we just sat there. We didn't move from the screen for a second. So for whoever has not seen that movie, do yourself a favor, turn the lights down low, put the volume up high, and just watch that movie.
Yeah, because there's so many subtleties in that, you know, just the camera movements, the sound design, the score that just like gives you this feeling of like premonition. And even though like some of the moments where, you know, when spoiler alert, the airplane goes down in front of them and you just feel something's not quite right, you know, it's just, they're in this peaceful meadow, you know, it's like a old farmhouse. It's obviously been burned out, but it was just, there's all those moments where it just gets under your skin. So it's really well done.
Yeah, and whoever built the set was amazing, because it just looked, I think some of it was maybe CGI, but still it was unbelievable.
I think it was pretty minimal. I mean, and that's what they talked about. It was so challenging because the cameras moved around so much that they couldn't use lights in the way that they would normally light scenes. And so they had to wait for the right light. You know, the filming in that area in that time of year, they had to wait for the clouds to do the right thing. And so a lot of it was just waiting for the right light to be right and just like doing a scene. So it's like amazing accomplishment to make that film, honestly.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a few more years before we see something as good. But I don't know. Maybe it'll be an inspiration for other filmmakers to follow suit.
I hope so. Yeah, that's what's beautiful about film. There's always creative minds like thinking up things that we never thought possible. So
yeah. So talking about other creative geniuses, you mentioned Alex Honnold, and you work with him and Jimmy and Chris Burkhardt and Renan and Tommy Caldwell and many, many, many more guys that are in the, you know, say outdoors or extreme sports industry. And these guys are they perform some of the craziest, scariest feats on earth. But yet there's some of the calmest, most level-headed, even-keeled guys that you'll ever meet. I've been to a few like Q&As and just listened to them talk. They're always just super, super mellow. How's that juxtaposition between someone that can do, look down 2,500 feet, no rope, and just someone who's just the chillest, most mellow person you'll ever meet?
Well, I mean, Alex is definitely in a league of his own on that front. He's able to control fear in a way that few humans are. But he is just, that's the thing about a lot of the athletes I've met and all the people you mentioned, they're really talented, but they're just normal people in a lot of ways. They're just kind of doing their things. But the creativity and the drive that is within them is what really sets them apart, and they're all dealing with their own issues and their own stuff, things that motivate them. But I think that's how you're able to manage that and how you're able to, make that into something creative. And, Jimmy and I started our careers around the same time. We both started them living out of the back of Subarus, and just kind of being total dirtbags and not really planning a photography career, but then getting that first check from Patagonia that kind of changed our lives, and I remember I met Chris Burkhardt in the Patagonia photo offices when he was, in his mid 20s, and he was just a young kind of, way confident photographer that, it was really interesting to see him go from kind of figuring it out. And he just had like one book out, I think at the time, and he'd been working with surfing, and then to see him really build a successful career. And we're both on the Sony team as Sony artisans. And it's cool to be in an industry for this long and see people go through all the phases of kind of self-discovery and reinvention, and which is what it takes to have a sustainable career. You can't just do one thing and think you've got it made. You have to constantly reinvent yourself. So.
Yeah. I mean, in your book, you mention you've had a few, near-death situations, and I know that a lot of people, again, in the industry, rock climbers, base jumpers, whatever it is, surfers, they, their life ends a little prematurely. Some, unfortunately. When you're in your 20s and your 30s, there's you feel invincible. Like you feel, I can do whatever I want. I have no fear, and even if you break, a bone, it's good in a month. But when you're in your 40s, life tends to be a little bit different. Do you have like a different outlook on it, or do you approach these things with just some, a little bit more caution nowadays?
I mean, I think you just have, as you get in your mid 30s and into your 40s, you start to just have more realization of just an awareness of your mortality. You realize what your limitations are, but the other thing is you realize what you can also push yourself a lot further than you think. I feel like the last few years have been some of the most challenging of my life in a lot of ways. Just, just experiences have happened, and, writing the book and building the house and just some other life stuff that happened just pushed me in ways that I never even imagined. But that's the beauty of it. You're constantly growing. But yeah, as far as just doing things for the sake of, risk and things, I'm not as into that. But I also, there's something about, paddling into a wave that's bigger than I ever thought I could paddle into, or, it used to be in climbing, being super run out way above my last gear, or like, soloing something that definitely like opened up my mind to new horizons. But I was also very aware that the consequences, that what can happen, I think that's what age teaches you. You're just more aware of if things go wrong, what might happen. But I've tried not to let fear dictate my life either, and just try to like keep pushing myself. So
yeah, I appreciate that. I mean, do you get a little bit of more of a, if you go, when you have a near-death experience, do you get a new hold on life, or is it something that is ephemeral? It just disappears after a while, or you need a kind of constant reminder that, oh, okay, this thing happened, and I had this new lease on life, but now I forgot about it 2 months later, and I have to remind myself about it again.
Yeah, I mean, it's you definitely need a constant reminder in some ways. And I mean, one of the most dangerous things we do is drive our cars, and like with all the distractions of our phones, it's like that's
100%. Yeah.
like, I mean, people texting and driving and stuff. That's the scariest thing of we could possibly do. And in the ocean, it's like I'm aware that if I go over the falls, if my board hits me and knocks me out, that it could be really, really, serious. And I had a friend who recently, was surfing Ocean Beach and smaller waves, and his board hit him and fractured his skull. And his brother was surfing with him. Fortunately, he's like a guy that actually he filmed both of those Rivian pieces with me. My friend Keenan, and I've traveled with him a lot and collaborated with him a lot. And he was, for a year, he was dealing with major brain injury, and his skull was split wide open, and it was just it wasn't even a big wave. It was just a small wave. And so things can happen when we don't expect them. And so I think that we just need to, like what we're realizing now with this current situation with this pandemic is that we just have to appreciate each moment, because really it's people get hurt doing the most mundane things. And that's when, like I said, driving, or just they trip and fall and hit their head or whatever. So it's like just remembering that life is precious, but also to live it to its fullest.
Yeah. Don't let fear dictate your day to day, but also use some caution or some thought when you do whatever it is that you're into.
Common sense.
Yeah. Common sense isn't that common.
It's true. Yeah.
So I just have a few last things. You mentioned also hallucinogens. And I think that's something that, again, not a lot of people talk about, but I know they help people with PTSD, with trauma, with just mental anguish that people have gone through. Is that something that's really helped you? And again, like I know you tend to maybe shy away a little bit from Western medicine. So is that something that you're really into? You think that it can help people?
Yeah, I mean, I remember listening to one of Michael Pollan's interviews when his book came out, How to Change Your Mind.
Yeah.
And I related to his sentiment. He was like, I grew up in an era, or he just said that he grew up in an era that, when LSD would melt your brain and all this stuff. And I was very much, under that impression too, the whole, like, this is your brain on drugs thing. And I didn't realize that, that since then, researching a lot of those substances, realizing how promising they had been in the 60s and 70s through research with mental health and depression and anxiety and PTSD and end of life care and all those things. I've kind of taken my own journey with those. And the one thing is that it's really important to have a guide and have really legitimate help in that, because there's a lot of shaman tourism that are not always, but don't have your best interest in mind. But there are a lot of things. Yeah. It's unfortunate that it is that challenging to right now in this country, because things are still classified the way they are, to find good help with that. Because but there's a lot of hope. I mean, I think that there's been a lot of research lately around psilocybin and LSD and the Molly or ecstasy, like for PTSD. There's been a lot of research about that, and I think that the reason why a lot of those substances got such bad names is the whole Grateful Dead era and dosing people and taking insane amounts of substances. And figuring out what the therapeutic dose is and how to help people through things. But for me personally, yeah, it's changed my life. It's helped me immensely with self-acceptance and overcoming depression and anxiety and my past trauma and looking at things. But yeah, it's not something I take lightly. It's something I definitely um, view as a therapeutic medium, but also as something that needs to be approached with caution as well. So
Yeah, I know the dosage is key. I know that in Israel they did a test trial with soldiers that had PTSD, and they used MDMA. And I don't remember the length of the trials, but I think it was a few months, and something. It was wildly successful. 80 or 90% of the people showed massive improvement, and it's just unfortunate that most places it's illegal, so they can't even do the test trials. Can't even test them on people that actually want it. And it's the same with all these different types of drugs, right? You have um, weed or THC that helps, whether in oil or smoking it, to patients across the country, from people with cancer to people with seizures and different ailments. And for some reason, they just make it hard for people to get the type of treatment that they need. I think Colorado made, I don't know if they made LSD, they made some psilocybin legal, or like some shrooms, they made them legal or partially legal. But there was something recently where I read where they're either thinking about it or they just made it legal there.
yeah, I think they're making strides towards that. I think especially for research. I mean, there's been a lot of private funding for all those, you know, across the board, figuring out
A lot of
whether,
VC investment. Yeah.
yeah, like private investment, and for Johns Hopkins University, for NYU, for some of the California universities. I know that they're making big strides with that, and I know that there's some in like whatever level of trial with FDA, and so I'm just hoping that those continue, because I think it's really important. To I mean, it's just a shame that something that has so much promise and has so much success, compared to a lot of the antidepressants and anti-anxiety drugs that only have like a mild success, and then they wear. I was on Zoloft for 4 years, and it frankly made me numb, and it helped me initially, but by the time I weaned myself off that, which was a rough road in itself, it wasn't really working anymore. And so to have something, and there's also like, not like microdosing hasn't been experienced or researched much, where the subperceptual doses where you're not seeing things or having any sort of trip whatsoever, those help immensely. And I've had my own experience with those, and tried in various ways to help with things. And I just hope that we can continue to move towards more education and more research on those things, because mental health is one of the big frontiers of health that really needs to be explored.
Yeah. I think there's some sort of I don't know, there's a block there. For some reason, they don't want certain drugs to be tested with. And I think in 10, 20, 30 years, they'll look back and they'll just realize how stupid they were, because these things I know personally a lot of people that it helped. So, I just wish that they'd take some of these roadblocks and some of these barriers off the legal system, and help scientists start at least studying this, if not legalizing, then at least studying to see the effect. But I guess we'll see what happens in the next few years.
For sure, yeah.
So today I had a little bit of a deep dive on your Instagram, and I saw that your first pic that you posted was on July 3rd, 2011. A long time ago.
Wow.
Yeah. And it was at a concert, a Modest Mouse concert. Do you remember that day?
I do, yeah. I read a little bit about my experience with Isaac and some of the other members of Modest Mouse. At the time, I think that might have been my second Modest Mouse show. The first one was one of my friends who I mentioned in the book, Matt Costa, opened up for them. But I was side stage, I think I was standing next to James Mercer from the Shins, and I took that photo. And was just like, there's a venue in Portland that I've seen Modest Mouse and a few others play, and is kind of an outdoor amphitheater setting that just has a really good energy. And I just remember being really excited to be side stage. And at the time, I think I'd gotten to know a fair number of the members of the band, so it was just fun to watch my friends play and have, a crowd of a few thousand like really responding. And but it's so wild to look back at Instagram and when it was just like a bunch of filters that were way over the top. And I left my whole archive of those first iPhone photos because I was really adamant. I think for the first few years, I was like, this is only an iPhone thing. I shouldn't post anything from my portfolio. I was kind of stubborn about that. And then I think around the time when I went on that trip to Norway, I started posting real photos. And when I switched over to Sony, to mirrorless actually. But it, it was pretty funny how Instagram started as like a kind of an option to the Hipstamatic or whatever those other filter apps were.
Yeah, I remember I had that.
And I actually, one of my friends was one of my friends was an early adopter of Instagram, and he sent me the link, and I was just like, just another filter. I didn't realize it was going to become such a platform for myself and others. So, yeah.
I mean, it's massive. It's massive for photographers. I don't think anyone at the time thought this would be such a platform that that photographers can leverage. I mean, other content creators as well, but definitely photographers.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, no, it's transcended everything that anybody expected. But I love the simplicity of it still. I mean, it's like you can only still post a photo or a short video. There's not, the stories obviously have become another medium, but it's I hope that it kind of continues in its realm, because it's still a place that for conversation and for sharing and a lot of the other other types of social media like that, like TikTok or whatever, like they're it's meant to just like consume massive amounts of media, but not like in your time. It's just like meant to be addictive, but whereas Instagram is sort of it's a little bit different. So I just hope that and whatever replaces it can also continue to be a place to share and for meaningful content too. So.
Yeah, I feel like it's the only, I don't know if the only place. I mean, at least for stills, it's probably the only place where you can really get good quality content by some of the top photographers in the world. So I enjoy it, and but yeah, who knows? In a few years, who knows what new format will be out there? It might be just a chip in your eye that you're gonna be.
Yeah, who knows? It's hard to say. We never imagined what would happen. Like that started 10 years ago around, and now it's so part of our lives. But Facebook was part of our lives, and then it moved on. People moved on from that. So it's I still have Facebook, but I rarely log in. So it's it's like something else will probably take its place eventually, but for now, it's a great place to share. So,
100%. Well, Ben, I really want to thank you. I loved. I feel like I know you so well. In the past 2 days, I've consumed so much Ben Moon. From your ebook to doing the podcast. So I really had a lot of fun talking to you and listening to the book. I think your life story is very well told, and it's an amazing story. So people should definitely get the ebook or get the book, Denali. And what this is something you want to tell. Where can people find you? Any upcoming things? I know right now there's probably nothing because of the coronavirus, so everyone's in lockdown. But anything you want to tell anyone?
Yeah, I mean, well, thanks first of all for having me on, Roy. I really appreciate it. But on Instagram, I'm Ben_Moon. on Twitter, it's just Ben Moon. And like that's the moon in the sky. um, and the book, there's the audiobook, there's the ebook, there's the paperback. That's pretty much available everywhere on Penguin in the U.S., on Simon and Schuster in Australia. And I made a simple link for that too. It says bit.ly/Denali book. And then if you want to check out the Denali film, it's on Vimeo and YouTube. If you just type in Denali Ben Moon, that's it'll pop up first. And then also check out the film that Jeff Johnson has directed about my story too. That one it's really interesting. It's kind of like a present day rendition. It's called The Lucky Ones, and that's on Vimeo as well. I have a link on my Instagram right now, so yeah, reach out, say hi, shoot me a note on the DM, whatever.
Awesome. And yeah, guys, check out those videos. I saw The Lucky Ones. I believe it was yesterday. Really cool video. So check all those out. Yeah, man. So thanks for taking the time. I know you're busy with the house, but I really appreciate you coming out and talking. And I had a great time. And yeah, stay healthy. And hopefully we'll do this again in the future.
Sounds good. I really appreciate it. Yeah, stay well, stay safe, and yeah, stay sane. Love those dogs up. Get them outside. So we'll talk soon.
All right, man. Have a good one.
Yeah, take care.